Welcome back to my channel. My name is Chris, and in this video I'm going to be making Thomas Riker's distressed remnants of his early season jumpsuit. Right now I'm wearing a jumpsuit that I made, jumbo spandex, correct color. This is what he would have been wearing when he beamed down to the planet. In the show, he was wearing a distressed one. It looked like they used wool to create the distressing, and they made it from scratch. Although these were not made of wool, these were made of a jumbo spandex. I'll be using a jumbo spandex. I'm going to customize a pattern based off of this pattern. I mean, I could, chop this thing up and make one from that. I'm not going to do that. That's just seems like a waste. Cut the sleeves. The pattern in the show, one of the sleeves was almost entirely gone. The other one was halfway gone. It's pretty much cut here with varying degrees of distressing at the bottom there. So what I'm going to do is alter some of the pattern pieces, recut everything, and then build it as if I was building this. It's a lengthy process. I will go into detail on this piping in the video. My last video I did a Yesterday's Enterprise, which had not a Mandarin collar, but a full length collar. Did not have this piping. It's a pretty specific type of way to do this, and if you want to get the look right, you got to do it right. And although it's going to be my interpretation of it, and it's from the 6th season, Second Chances. If you have a chance to check that episode out. He only wears it in the first few minutes of the episode, and then they switch him over to the... For those also interested, I did make the jumpsuit from that Trek unification video that the alien was wearing. Not sure what the alien's name is. I'm not a big fan of Discovery, but I did make that jumpsuit. So let's get started. The first thing we're gonna need is our fabrics, and I have some gold jumbo spandex, some black. I do have season 1 jumpsuit pattern here. Obviously we're gonna have to modify many of the pieces. There's no need to have the full sleeve or even the bottom of the pants. So we're gonna take the pattern, we're gonna do some adjustments. First thing that I like to do every time I do a project, this fabric I use to cut, I always replace the blade. It's just best practice, and with spandex it makes it much smoother. So I have all my pattern pieces for the season 1/2 jumpsuit here. This jacket is going to be for me. I normally do a 38 chest for my jumpsuits, but for this one this is a 40, because it's going to be more of a jacket than a jumpsuit, so it doesn't be as form-fitting as that. So I'm going to go through all these pieces, find which ones don't need to be modified, and then put them to the side. And then the ones that do need to be modified, I'm going to notate on each piece where it needs to be trimmed off or cut away. And then I'll retrace it onto a new piece here so that I don't damage this in case I need to use this for a future project. So all right, so checking in. I repatterned the sleeves because each sleeve is a different length and it doesn't make sense to cut all the fabric out and then remove the sleeve afterwards. So here is the one sleeve here, and the sleeve here. On the show, this sleeve was almost non-existent, but I'm going to leave a little bit just because I want it to be a little more structurally sound and have a little more structure to it. So I went through the pants of the jumpsuit, and I did mark off with pencil where I wanted it, but in order to not have to cut this, I simplified it by just making it a straight fold line. So when I get... Alright, so now I'm going to be cutting the fabric pieces out. I'm going to start with the pant legs, or essentially the bottom of the jacket, if you will. This crease here that I made, that's going to be the bottom of the jacket. I gave a little bit of extra because I'm going to weather it and make it look distressed. But instead of cutting a new piece, I'm just going to line it up with as best I can an edge, just also making sure that the grain is in the right direction. So once I get this all cut out, then I'll go back and then I'll cut that straight line. It doesn't have to be super perfect. So I'm on to the piping for the jacket here. This is the piece that came with it for the pattern. In the past, I would actually cut the piece out and then trace it over, but since it's basically the same dimensions, you don't really need to do that. I usually get a measurement of how big the it is, my seam gauge here, and it's about, looks like about 1 1/8. So I take that, needs to be here, 23 inches, so just go a little bit longer, 24. Better safe than sorry. This ruler is it's for cons tools, for foam, but I find it very useful as a nice straight edge, and you can press down and not have your fingers anywhere near. And you could use this straight edge right here like this, and just follow up there. And then, yeah. So we have 3 equal lengths of piping material. Right, so we have these 3. And what's going to happen is you're going to fold them over, press them down, and then this will be your piping. It'll stick out about 3/16 sticking out. Sometimes it's 1/4 inch, depending. But with those pieces cut, we're going to cut the sleeves, the front and the back, and then that should be it for all the fabric we're going to need to cut. So all my pattern pieces are now cut. I like to clip the pattern piece to the fabric so that I know exactly which piece I'm going to be using. I did, unfortunately, cut an incorrect piece. So I made this custom piece, and it's transparent. And I used these lines for the grain. And I drew them on this side. And I mistakenly thought that that was the right side of the fabric when this was the right side. So minor thing, I caught it early, so it's not a big deal. So I just cut a new piece. This is the amount of fabric that I wasted, but all right. So I'm working on the piping for the yoke here. I'm just gonna go over my process on how I do it. I always like to just make sure I have enough length, because this is going to be split in half for the two front sides. One piece for this, and this is the bottom part of the yoke. This is the right side of the fabric. This is the top part. I know by doing these for many years, but generally you want to have the pattern so you can make sure you're in the right direction. So you can see it up and down. This is this side of the pattern. So obviously this is the top, and this is where the yoke goes here. It's going to be a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And how this is going to go, you're going to put the edge, the folded edge, to the edge of the fabric here. And like I said, I always do is I always flip it in place first, just so I know everything is. So that's the last of the pins. Most of them were about 3/16 sticking out from the between the two pieces. So I'm gonna go, and what I'll do is I'll mark that. I have this magnetic seam guide. So basically you put the fabric up against it and it'll keep the same distance, and you don't have to worry about it. When this seems to be exactly 3/16, and that's quite a small margin. Any slight variation could adjust that length, so I like to mark it so that I start in the right spot, and then after that I kind of just know that it's not going to move, and I'll just butt it along the edge and make sure that we get the right spot with that. Pretty consistent, which is what you're going for. So what I usually do is just to double check my work, I'll take the seam gauge and I'll kind of like run it along the edge, the top piece of the yoke, and I always like to just lay it out just to see how it's going to go before I start sewing, so you have the correct sides in. So lay it like that. So this is how it should pretty much look when you're done. The seam will flip on itself and then you'll sew it down. It does help with that. All right, so what we're gonna do, have any discrepancies? Motor to it, and so that's done. So here's the I guess you can call it the moment of truth for this piece. This is where the piping will officially fall, so you don't want any puckers here or anything. So this is how it's gonna look. I'm gonna take my seam gauge, and obviously you're gonna trim the inside of this to remove some of the bulk, and then you're gonna press it down, so it's gonna stick out that much. So here's it's 3/16. So all the piping has been completed. It all came out just as I had hoped. All the distances are equal along each seam, and they're also equal to one another. So if that's not lined up, you're going to notice that right away. So I'm going to be adding side panels. Side pieces are now on, and now we're going to go on to adding the bottom parts to these. The bottoms and tops of the front are attached. This seam here is quite tricky. It did take me 2 tries. In a previous video, I did go over a little more in detail of my process on doing this. I'm quite pleased with that. That is exactly what I want it to be. It doesn't even have any kind of pucker here for that. But it's coming out pretty good. And that'll probably be the hardest part of this entire thing for me specifically. Some people will be the piping. Since this is not a full jumpsuit, I don't have to worry about an invisible zipper connecting these pieces together, so that's a bonus. So I just wanted to check in and go over some of the specific details of this particular jumpsuit slash turned into jacket. But right now I'm at the 2 front pieces. I have my altered bottom piece with the shortened sleeve, which I will be distressing and making it look a lot more dirty and do some fraying and some tears here. I'd say about 95% of this is the same as the full jumpsuit here. I mean, I could just leave it raw like that. It'll work with the design of the jacket itself. It's supposed to be stressed and beaten up for, I think he was on the planet for 8 years. But yeah, this point came out great. Putting these yoke pieces on, that's the front, and the back is a little more simpler than the front, and then combine them together. So I've finished the back. We got the back all ready to go. The 2 front pieces. See the short sleeve. Here's the other front. So now working on the side seam that connects the front and backs together. So these are 2 crucial points here. What I like to do, I've mentioned it in another video, but I like to use these little clips, which they pretty much mimic about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll place the fabrics together, clip over them, and then I'll flip the fabric over to see, because it'll hold it enough pressure to see where your seam is. And as you can see, that you need that little point for the black, if that's angle. Same thing with the piping and the collar. I've already stuck pins in there so that it's not, I I'm not able to spread out as much, but you get the point. You want to line these up, and that's why earlier it was crucial to get these the same distance, so when that they meet, there's not a discrepancy in their length. So now that that's all situated, I'm just gonna pin the rest of it and then sew that down, do the other side, and then we should have a functioning garment at that point. So. It's not the easiest to do, especially with all those layers of spandex underneath. When you press this out, it should line up pretty spot on. You just got to copy that the other shoulder, and so we're on the final home stretch here. We got the last major seam that's gonna close up this side here. I already got the other side here done, and then after that, I'm gonna add the collar. The learning process. Do some scoring, and jumbo spandex doesn't really fray per se, but we can figure something out. Get a little acrylic paint, maybe. Fully completed. It's looking pretty solid. I'm just gonna put the collar on, and then we can do some final fittings and test how it looks. The collar's been attached. I just have to press this down, and then I'm gonna hand stitch that down so that it stays like that. So here it is, the fully constructed Thomas Riker jacket. I left the pattern pieces a little long, especially on the sleeve, and even this sleeve is even shorter on the show, as well as this stuff to be trimmed out. And what else I'm going to do is mark all that out, and then I'm going to distress and fray the bottom edges of the jacket, the sleeves, and I'm going to use some acrylic paint and washes to kind of get this a little darker, like it's been dirtied up and roughed up over the 8 years. Scissors. Here we go. So yeah, so I've trimmed it down to where I want it to be. Now I'm gonna use the scissors and kind of fray the fabric. I did all the physical distressing. I did a multitude of passes with scissors, a box cutter, and a wire steel brush. Um, I found that at the end there, the box cutter fully extended, scraping along it gives the pilling as best as it can with the jumbo spandex. So overall, I think it looks great. Next up, I'm gonna do the paint distressing. So I finished doing the weathering with the acrylic paints. Dark as that over there, but that's mostly water causing that. So we'll use a hair dryer, blow it out, and see what it looks like, and then from there, here we have it. Thomas Riker's distressed former jumpsuit, turned jacket. This was a lot of fun. Although it was overall less work than a full jumpsuit, for the most part, I think I still had to use 90 to 95% of the pattern pieces, so it didn't really cut that much time off. Here we have it, the Thomas Riker distressed season 1 jumpsuit, former jumpsuit, turned into a nice fashionable jacket. I'm really pleased with how the distressing and the weathering came out. The first time doing this on any kind of fabric material. Normally it's a very clean type of uniform, but this one turned out great. Like I said, the original one on the show, they used the wool, maybe because it was easier to distress, because it weathers a lot easier with the just the type of fabric the wool is. This I had to use several different techniques to get it to look distressed, and then use acrylic paint to give it that dirty look. And down here I used more of a gray to kind of just highlight some of the distressing, so you can see it a little bit better. I did use a pattern that was one size bigger than this jumpsuit here, just because this jacket, you don't need it to be too too form-fitting, and it doesn't close up or anything. So, but definitely looks the part. It is more my interpretation of how I would have made it if the showrunners came to me and was like, "Can we make a distressed jumpsuit?" I wouldn't have used the wool because the uniforms were not made of wool, so it made more sense to go with what they used and distress that. Surprised on the show that they didn't take an existing jumpsuit and then just distress that. They clearly went and remade a wool version of this and then distressed that. But maybe back in the 90s, early 90s, it showed up better on camera, or they wanted to be more consistent with the wool uniforms they were using at the time because it was season 6. But overall, I'm very pleased with the turnout of the Thomas Riker. I will be probably wearing this to the San Francisco Star Trek convention in January. I generally, when I wear uniforms, I don't anything from the neck up. This is how I look: beard, no hair, and that's how it's gonna be. So even though it's Thomas Riker, he had hair, I don't, and so if you're if you like this video, be sure to hit like, subscribe below, share it out if you know anybody who would enjoy this video. I had fun making it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching. A few ideas on the table, so we're going to see how that goes. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.